The city of Aurora Prime floated high above the swirling storms of a massive gas giant. Its silver towers glinted in the artificial sunlight, and corridors hummed with machinery, commerce, and human voices. Among the colony's many residents, Marcus Hale moved quietly, carrying a toolkit heavier than his frame suggested. He wasn't a hero by title, just a maintenance technician, but in his eyes the colony's safety and order mattered more than recognition. That evening the station streets were unusually empty. The orbital rings reflected soft light across the city, casting long shadows on the polished walkways. Marcus worked alone, checking plasma conduits and recalibrating emergency generators. The hum of energy thrummed in his ears, steady and reliable, unlike the chaos that was about to arrive. A small, urgent voice broke the quiet. "Sir, please, can you help me?" Marcus turned to see a little girl no older than 7, clutching a glowing holographic letter. Her wide eyes were bright with hope, yet shadowed by fear. Lila. He had seen her around the colony, always cheerful, always polite. But now her trembling hands made him pause. "It's for Santa," she said, holding the letter close. "But, the aliens, they might take it. I need it delivered." Marcus knelt to her level. "Aliens? Oh, where?" "They fly fast," Lila said, voice tight with worry. "They steal things humans care about. They think it's funny." Her lips quivered, and Marcus felt a pang of responsibility. To anyone else it might seem a small, trivial worry. But Marcus understood immediately that this wasn't about a letter, it was about hope, trust, and something fragile that humans needed to protect. "I'll deliver it," he said, determination hardening his chest. "I promise you, Lila, it won't be lost." She exhaled in relief, a tiny smile breaking through her fear. She handed him the letter carefully. The holographic projection glowed softly, showing her encoded wishes in tiny, delicate lines of light. Marcus held it gently, almost afraid to breathe too hard. This was more than data. This was someone's heart, someone's dream. Before he could take a step toward the nearest courier port, a sharp whir cut through the air. A sleek, silver alien skimmer appeared in the sky above the city, moving with impossible speed and precision. Its engines hummed with a tone humans could feel in their bones. Marcus's stomach tightened. This was no ordinary theft. It was professional, predatory. The skimmer dove, slicing through the streets with a grace that mocked human reaction times. A mechanical claw extended, snapping the letter from Marcus's hands with a flick so fast it left him stunned. He lunged, but the skimmer's thrusters kicked in, and it shot upward into the orbital rings, carrying the precious letter out of reach. Lila gasped, clutching her chest. Marcus's heart pounded. His hands shook, not from fear but from fury. Humans might not have the speed or strength of these aliens, but they had something no alien could match. Courage, determination, and the ability to think. He couldn't let this stand. "Don't worry, Lila," he said, voice low but firm. "I'll get it back. I don't care what it takes." He ran to the nearest maintenance elevator, pressing the controls with a speed born of instinct. Sparks flew from the old panels and the lift groaned, but it obeyed. Marcus's mind raced. He needed a plan. He had nothing but his toolkit, a magnetic grappler, and the colony's narrow knowledge of orbital mechanics. The skimmer had speed, firepower, and maneuverability, but Marcus had intelligence and daring. That could be enough. As he ascended, the glow of the skimmer disappeared into the orbital rings. Marcus's chest tightened. Each second it stayed out of reach made the letter more vulnerable, more distant. But he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his grappler, checked the magnetic pulse, and recalculated his path through the maintenance corridors. Every bolt, every hatch, every conduit could become a route, or a trap. Failure wasn't just losing a letter, it was letting a child's hope vanish into the void. He imagined Lila's eyes, wide and trusting, and that vision anchored him. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, he reminded himself, it was acting despite it. Every leap, every climb, every calculation had to be perfect. One slip, one misfire, and the letter, along with Lila's trust, would be gone forever. Marcus emerged onto an observation platform overlooking the orbital rings. The skimmer was still ahead, glinting in the dim light, impossibly fast. His hands tightened on the grappler. The distance seemed insurmountable, the odds stacked against him, yet he felt no hesitation. Humans had survived far worse. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and they would do it again. He took a deep breath, aimed, and fired the magnetic grappler toward the nearest floating cargo module. The line arced through space, a thread of determination connecting him to his goal. If he missed, he would tumble into the void. If he succeeded, He might just reach the skimmer before it disappeared entirely. For a moment, the city, the storm below, and the stars above seemed to hold their breath. Marcus's gaze never wavered from the silver blip in the distance. Every instinct, every ounce of human cunning, and every flicker of courage converged into a single decision. He would not fail. Not for himself. Not for Lila. Not for human hope. And as the grappler latched onto the module, Marcus felt a surge of momentum and possibility. The chase had begun. Marcus swung across the orbital rings, the magnetic grappler holding him against the spinning cargo modules. The skimmer that carried Lila's letter glinted in the distance, darting like a predator. Every twist of the rings tested his grip. Every misstep would send him tumbling into empty space, and the letter, her hope, would vanish forever. He adjusted his trajectory, calculating spin, speed, and distance in real time. Zero-G wasn't forgiving, but Marcus had trained in emergency maintenance drills for years. His body moved almost instinctively. A leap from one module to the next, a twist in midair to avoid protruding pipes, a hard push to gain momentum toward the skimmer. Sweat stung his eyes, not from heat but from adrenaline and focus. The Xiran pilot noticed him. The skimmer twisted sharply, a sharp metallic squeal echoing across the orbital corridor. A claw shot forward, aiming for Marcus. He tumbled, twisting in midair to evade it, his heart hammering. Humans weren't meant to survive attacks like this. Yet Marcus pressed on. Survival wasn't enough, he had to win. He had to bring hope back to Lila. He spotted a floating drone pod ahead. With quick thinking he fired his grappler again, latching onto it. The magnetic pulse held. Using the pod as a slingshot, he launched himself closer to the skimmer. The distance shrank by meters with every second. The pilot, confident in alien superiority, scoffed, adjusting course to shake him off. But Marcus wasn't relying on raw speed. He relied on human ingenuity. Using handholds in the ring service structure, Marcus swung closer to the skimmer, timing each move with care. One wrong calculation, one missed latch, and he would drift into the abyss. His lungs burned, muscles ached, but his mind remained razor-sharp. He analyzed the skimmer's pattern. It moved in 3-second oscillations, predictable but deadly. Using that rhythm he could match its movement, get close enough to board. Suddenly, a burst of alien energy flashed past him. The skimmer had fired warning pulses. If it hit him directly, the grappler would fry, sending him spinning uncontrollably. Marcus twisted his body, avoiding the blast by inches. Humans weren't faster than Xirans, weren't stronger, but they adapted. He gritted his teeth. Adaptation was his weapon. Courage his shield. A floating panel jostled loose nearby. Marcus grabbed it and angled it toward the energy burst. The metal reflected the pulse away, momentarily blinding the pilot. The skimmer veered slightly, giving Marcus a sliver of advantage. He lunged, his hands finding the side hatch. It was locked with alien mechanisms, unfamiliar shapes, glowing buttons and spinning energy circuits. He could feel time slipping away. Lila's letter, just meters away, could vanish at any moment. Marcus didn't panic. Panic had no place here. He studied the lock with sharp eyes. Human hands could manipulate things the Xirans didn't expect. Using his toolkit, he bypassed the first sequence with careful adjustments. Sparks flew but the hatch remained closed. He recalibrated, shifted his approach, and applied pressure in a precise pattern. One wrong move could fry the entire interface, triggering security lockdowns. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, with a click and hiss, the hatch disengaged. Marcus shoved it open just as the skimmer twisted violently. He shot inside, tumbling across the alien floor but clutching the letter tightly. Relief surged, then vanished instantly. The skimmer wasn't done. The pilot activated the vessel's thrusters for evasive maneuvers, shaking Marcus violently. One strong jerk and the letter could fly from his grasp. Marcus held on. Every nerve burned, every muscle screamed, but he tightened his grip, adjusting balance with every violent lurch. His ingenuity and focus became his shield. Humans didn't have alien tech, but they had something rarer: courage, determination, and a mind that refused to quit. He stabilized himself near the central hold, scanning the interior. The letter glowed softly, safe, for now. Then he noticed the danger. Energy conduits lining the floor, pulsing with alien power. One misstep could trigger alarms, or worse, overload the systems, destroying the vessel and the letter. He had to move carefully, calculate each step, and remain unseen. His heart pounded as he stepped lightly across the floor, eyes scanning, hands ready to brace against sudden shifts. The skimmer banked sharply, sending Marcus sliding. He clutched the letter tighter, gritting his teeth against pain. Humans weren't invincible. Humans could get hurt, crushed, or killed. But humans refused to surrender. Every setback fueled his determination. He pressed onward, inching closer to the vessel's cargo bay, where Lila's wishes waited to be saved. The pilot noticed the movement. A warning light flashed, alarms blared. The skimmer jolted violently. Marcus had seconds. Seconds to act, to survive, to reclaim hope for a child who had trusted him. The tension was suffocating. The abyss of space loomed outside, the alien pilot was relentless, and the letter, the symbol of everything human courage stood for, was right there, just out of reach. Marcus took a deep breath. Every calculation, every skill, every ounce of courage had led to this moment. The chase was far from over, but he wasn't about to fail. Humans could fight against impossible odds, adapt and survive. He had the choice: give up and let hope die, or risk everything to succeed. And Marcus Hale had never been one to give up. Marcus pressed against the alien floor, clutching Lila's glowing letter. The skimmer jolted violently, rattling his arms and legs. Every second the pilot noticed him was another second closer to disaster. One misstep, one moment of hesitation, and the letter, or worse, Marcus himself, could vanish into the void. He had no weapons. No alien tech in his hands, nothing but human ingenuity, determination, and sheer courage. That had to be enough. Humans weren't the strongest. They weren't the fastest. But they adapted, they thought, and they refused to surrender. Marcus was about to prove it. The interior of the skimmer was tight, corridors lined with pulsing energy conduits and alien devices that hummed with power he didn't understand. The pilot assumed no human could survive in this space for more than a heartbeat. That miscalculation would be their undoing. Marcus studied the conduits, traced the paths of glowing lines, and noticed the weak points, areas where energy bled into small junctions. He smiled. Humans could exploit patterns, even ones aliens thought were impossible to read. He gripped his grappler and looked around for a way to make it work. There. A cargo drone, suspended midair by magnetic locks. Small, fragile, overlooked, but perfect. Marcus could use it as a tool, a distraction, maybe even a weapon. His mind raced. Timing would be everything. One wrong pulse and the drone would explode against the alien system, setting off alarms or destroying the letter. Marcus attached the grappler to the drone's metallic frame, checked the magnetic pulse alignment, and calculated the trajectory toward the nearest energy junction. He waited for the skimmer to sway. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1. The drone shot forward. Sparks danced along its surface as it collided with the junction, triggering a short circuit. Red warning lights flashed, alarms blared, and the pilot cursed in a language Marcus didn't understand. The skimmer wobbled violently, thrusters adjusting to regain balance. Marcus lunged toward the central hold, holding the letter like it was the most precious object in existence, because it was. The pilot's eyes widened. The human wasn't retreating, wasn't panicking, wasn't begging. He was calculating, reacting, surviving. That alone was terrifying. Marcus had to move fast. The corridors twisted, energy conduits hummed with danger, and the skimmer swayed unpredictably. One hand on the wall, one hand gripping the letter, he pushed himself forward, using every ounce of strength and balance. Sparks from damaged panels flew around him, some barely missing, others striking close enough to singe hair and clothing. Pain didn't slow him. Fear didn't stop him. Humans survived this way. Humans thrived this way. He reached a junction leading to the cargo bay. Beyond that, the letter was safe, or at least as safe as a human could make it inside an alien skimmer. But there was a final obstacle. The pilot had sealed a force field across the doorway. It pulsed with lethal energy, invisible yet deadly. Marcus studied it, trying to find a weakness. Aliens relied on strength, on power, on intimidation. Humans relied on observation, improvisation, and courage. He adjusted his toolkit. Metallic rods, a stripped wire, a small capacitor. Enough to create a makeshift EMP pulse. It wasn't guaranteed. One failure and the field would fry him instantly. But Marcus calculated the timing. The force field pulsed every 1.8 seconds. He had a window. Just one. Heart pounding, breath shallow, he activated the device. A sharp pulse shot forward. The force field flickered, shivered, then died for a split second. Marcus lunged. He felt the heat of alien energy brushing his arms, the pulse humming beneath his fingertips, but he made it through. He rolled across the floor and landed near the cargo hold. The letter glowed softly in his hand. He exhaled, a breath of relief he barely allowed himself to feel. For a moment, it seemed he had won. But the skimmer wasn't done. The pilot, realizing the human had outsmarted him, growled and slammed the ship into a sudden evasive maneuver. Marcus was thrown to the floor, colliding with a control console. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he held the letter tightly. Lila's hope would not be crushed, not if he had anything to say about it. From his position on the floor, Marcus scanned the skimmer. He realized something. The ship relied heavily on magnetic stabilization. If he could overload the system with one more pulse, he could neutralize the ship temporarily, giving him enough time to escape with the letter. But that meant getting closer to the engine core, a suicide run if the pilot noticed. Marcus didn't hesitate. Humans did not give up when the odds were stacked impossibly high. He crawled toward the core, timing every movement with the skimmer's oscillations. Sparks flew, energy arcs danced dangerously close, and every step could be his last. Yet his mind remained sharp. Every calculation, every motion, every second mattered. Failure was not an option. He reached the core. The hum of alien power vibrated through the floor. Marcus connected his grappler wire to the nearest junction, careful, precise. One pulse and the magnetic systems overloaded, just enough to stall the skimmer without destroying it. His fingers tensed. He activated it. The lights flickered. The thrusters shuddered. The pilot shouted, frantic. Marcus felt the shudder beneath him and knew it had worked. For the first time the skimmer slowed, giving Marcus the chance he needed. The cargo bay was within reach. His grip on the letter tightened. Humans had survived impossible odds before, not because they were strongest but because they refused to quit. Marcus had just proved it in the harshest way imaginable. But the journey wasn't over. The skimmer still moved, still threatened, and still carried dangers he could not yet predict. Marcus looked ahead, determination burning in his eyes. He had Lila's hope, but the chase was far from finished. The skimmer might have been slowed, but the real challenge was just beginning. Marcus tightened his grip on Lila's glowing letter as the skimmer lurched violently. The ship's thrusters fired erratically, sparks arcing across the walls, warning alarms screaming in an alien language he didn't understand. Every second counted. Every step he took was a gamble. One wrong move and he would be flung into the void, or worse, lose the letter he had fought so hard to reclaim. He scanned the cargo bay. The door to open space, the only exit, was just a few meters ahead. But between him and freedom was the Xeran pilot, seated at the controls, eyes narrowed, claws poised over the interface. The pilot's expression was a mix of frustration and disbelief. "A human, inside my skimmer?" it hissed, the words harsh and guttural. Marcus didn't flinch. Humans had faced predators far larger, faster, and stronger before. Humans had survived wars, plagues, and hostile worlds. And Marcus, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in resolve, would prove that courage and ingenuity outweighed sheer strength. He calculated quickly. The pilot's hands moved in rhythmic patterns, too fast for raw human reflexes to match. But humans could anticipate patterns, predict movements, and improvise solutions. Marcus spotted the console's energy conduits running just beneath the interface. If he could overload them, the pilot's control could be disabled, at least temporarily. He crawled along the corridor, using the ship's swaying motion to his advantage. Each jolt brought him closer to disaster. Sparks flew, some close enough to singe his arm, but he pressed onward. He attached a grappler wire to the nearest conduit, connecting it to a makeshift pulse generator cobbled together from his toolkit. Timing was everything. The skimmer twisted, thrusters flaring, and Marcus synchronized his pulse. He activated it. A surge of electricity arced across the interface. Red lights flashed, the pilot howled in fury, and control panels sparked and shorted. The skimmer shuddered violently, engines straining. Marcus took the opportunity. With one explosive leap, he vaulted toward the pilot's console, sliding across the floor in zero-G, clutching the letter to his chest. The pilot lunged to block him, claws scraping against the metal. Marcus twisted midair, flipping to avoid the strike, and slammed his shoulder against the interface. The alien recoiled, screeching as the pulse destabilized its controls. The skimmer lurched again. Outside the viewport, the stars blurred with motion. Marcus spotted a narrow maintenance hatch leading to the external rings. The exit was within reach, but the skimmer's thrusters could throw him off at any moment. He had to act fast. Using his grappler, Marcus anchored himself to a structural beam, bracing against the violent movement of the ship. He swung toward the hatch, every movement calculated, every ounce of human strength applied. The pilot recovered partially, reaching toward him. Marcus dodged again, kicking the alien back just enough to give himself space. Humans weren't meant to fight Xerans hand to hand, but they adapted, and humans never surrendered. Finally, Marcus reached the hatch. He pushed it open, and the vacuum of space hissed in protest. Stars twinkled cold and indifferent. One leap, one bold move, and he could escape with the letter. He jumped, shooting his grappler toward a nearby orbital module. The magnetic pulse held. He swung out of the skimmer, just as the vessel groaned and wobbled from its overloaded systems. The pilot screamed, its claws useless in the vacuum. Marcus tumbled across the surface of the module, adjusting his trajectory, the letter glowing softly against his chest. He felt weightless yet fully alive. Humans thrived under impossible circumstances. They survived the void, the storms, the predators because they refused to quit. And Marcus had just proven that courage and intelligence could defeat raw alien power. The skimmer, destabilized by the pulse and now spinning out of control, hurtled past the orbital rings. Marcus watched it drift away, realizing that the pilot would recover, but the human had already won. The letter was safe. Lila's hope remained intact. The impossible had been overcome, not by might, but by human determination, ingenuity, and courage. Marcus caught his breath, letting himself float for a moment in the quiet of space. Every nerve was still thrumming, every muscle burned, but a profound satisfaction filled him. Humans didn't need alien weapons to change outcomes. Humans could take what seemed lost and make it theirs through ingenuity, courage, and relentless action. He attached a tether to a nearby module and swung toward the station's docking port. The glow from the letter reflected across the metal, a beacon of hope. As he neared the airlock, he allowed himself a small, grim smile. Lila's trust had been placed in him, and he had not failed. One thought remained in his mind as he prepared to re-enter Aurora Prime. Humans were underestimated far too often. Out there, among the stars, against beings far more advanced, one human with determination, intelligence, and courage could make a difference. One human could defy the odds, reclaim what was taken, and restore hope where others might have given up. And as Marcus slid through the airlock, the city lights of Aurora Prime welcoming him back, he knew the fight wasn't over. The universe was full of challenges, full of impossible odds. But humans would rise to meet them. For now, though, there was one small victory. The letter was safe, Lila's dream preserved, and a human's courage had changed everything. Marcus floated through the airlock, letting the pressurized hiss swallow the chaos behind him. Aurora Prime's lights shimmered through the viewport, familiar and grounding after the weightless fury of space. He clutched Lila's letter tightly, its glow warm against his chest, a fragile bundle of hope he had risked everything to save. The docking bay was quiet. Engineers and maintenance crews glanced up, startled by his sudden return, their eyes widening as they saw the battered human who had emerged from the void unscathed, clutching what everyone had assumed was lost. No words were spoken. Humans rarely needed them to convey courage. Marcus's gaze swept over the room, but his mind was elsewhere. Lila's face, wide-eyed and trembling with anticipation, filled his thoughts. He moved quickly through the corridors, each step echoing determination. The colony's automated lifts and transport systems hummed in quiet contrast to the chaos he had just escaped. Yet every familiar sound reminded him of why he had risked everything. This was human hope, human trust, and human spirit, things no alien technology could suppress if a human refused to surrender. When he reached the small recreational plaza where Lila often played, he found her standing by the holo panels, clutching her little coat tightly. Her eyes widened as she saw him emerge from the corridor. You did it?" she whispered, voice cracking with awe. Marcus knelt to her level, careful not to startle her. "I promised," he said simply. "Your letter is safe." She gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks, and threw her arms around him. The hug was brief but intense, as though all the fear, doubt, and worry she had carried melted into that single embrace. Marcus felt a lump rise in his throat. It was a victory far greater than any report or medal could capture. This was the human heart at its finest, resilient, determined, and courageous in the face of impossible odds. The colony's residents began to notice. Engineers peeked from service corridors, children paused mid-play, and even a few Xeran traders in the nearby orbital market stopped to watch. Whispers spread quickly. A human had defied an alien raider, survived the skimmer, and returned with a child's hope intact. For most, it seemed impossible. For Marcus, it was simply what humans did when hope mattered. He handed the holographic letter back to Lila. She examined it, awe and relief shining in her eyes. "It's still perfect," she said. "Nothing's missing." Marcus nodded. "It had to be. Hope can't be broken. not if humans fight for it. A small crowd had gathered now, murmuring in admiration and disbelief. Marcus straightened, scanning the faces of his fellow colonists. He realized in that moment how much humanity relied on courage in the universe's darkest corners. Ordinary humans like him could shine brilliantly when the stakes were highest. One act of determination could ripple through an entire colony, inspiring others to stand taller, fight harder, and never accept defeat. Humans? A voice muttered from the back. It was an older engineer, his face lined with years of orbital work. They're tougher than any alien thinks. Never give up. That human saved a child's dream. Marcus's eyes met Lila's again. She smiled through tears, a light that seemed to brighten the entire plaza. In that smile, he saw the payoff of every risk, every calculation, every heartbeat in the skimmer. A human's courage had made the impossible possible. Even the Xeran traders paused, their expressions neutral but thoughtful. Marcus realized something important. Humans weren't just fragile beings in the stars. They adapted, they improvised, and when it mattered most they could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast the universe's most advanced species. One human could change outcomes that seemed preordained. One human could preserve hope. Marcus stayed with Lila a moment longer, letting her words of thanks sink in. She whispered, "I knew humans could do anything." That simple truth, voiced by a child, carried a weight heavier than any medal or title. Humans didn't need alien respect. They earned it with every act of courage, every choice to rise against the impossible. Later, Marcus returned to the maintenance corridors, battered but unbroken. Sparks flew from misaligned panels, engines hummed, and alarms reset themselves after the skimmer's interference. He paused for a breath, listening to the hum of machinery that had been his constant companion. Out there, in space, humans were often underestimated. But today humans had triumphed not through brute force, but through heart, mind, and unyielding determination. The news spread throughout Aurora Prime. Children told each other the story of the human who chased a Xeran skimmer through orbital rings. Adults nodded knowingly, inspired by what they had seen. Humans were fragile, but brilliant. Humans could survive impossible odds, not because they were aliens equals in strength or speed, but because they had something the universe could never quantify: courage, intelligence, and a refusal to surrender. Marcus returned to his quarters that night, exhausted but smiling. He placed the letter carefully on a small shelf. Lila's trust, the weight of her hope, and the knowledge that he had made a difference rested there. Outside, the orbital city glimmered, indifferent yet magnificent. Above the storms of the gas giant, human ingenuity had proven itself once again. Humans would face countless challenges in the stars. Many would seem impossible. Many would demand sacrifices that no one should have to make. But Marcus Hale, ordinary human with extraordinary courage, had shown that even against the fastest, cleverest aliens, humans could fight, survive, and preserve hope. One human had changed the course of a child's life, and perhaps, in small but meaningful ways, reminded the galaxy that humans were a force to be reckoned with. And in the quiet of his room, Marcus smiled, knowing the truth he had always carried: humans never back down. Humans adapt. Humans endure. And when they rise, nothing, not alien raiders, not impossible odds, could stand in their way. Hope, courage, and determination, these were humanity's greatest weapons. And today they had won.